He said my ex and I are completely innocent. That he didn't tell me they were working together because he was afraid I'd overreact. That I was being paranoid. That I should trust him. Then I checked the project files he'd been working on late every night for 3 months. Every single one had her name on it. And none of them were real client work. When I showed him what I found, he stopped defending her and started begging me not to leave. My name is Stephanie. I was 33 when it happened, living in Minneapolis, working as a senior data analyst for a healthcare company. I'd been with Marcus for 5 years, engaged for one of them. We had a wedding planned for the following spring, a venue booked, deposits paid, the whole future mapped out in color-coded spreadsheets because that's how I approached everything in my life. Marcus was a project manager at a tech consulting firm. Good job, decent salary, the kind of stable career that made my parents approve when I brought him home for the first time. We'd met through mutual friends, dated for 6 months before moving in together, got engaged on a trip to Iceland that he'd planned down to the minute. I thought we were solid. The kind of couple that communicated well, handled conflict maturely, planned for the future together. We had our issues like anyone. He could be defensive when criticized, I could be controlling about details, but nothing that felt insurmountable. Then 3 months ago, he started working late. Not every night, but enough that I noticed. He'd come home at 8 or 9, tired, stressed, barely able to hold a conversation over dinner. When I asked about it, he said his company had taken on a huge new client, and he was leading the project. High stakes, tight deadline, all hands on deck. I believed him because why wouldn't I? I worked late sometimes too. I understood deadlines and stress and the toll that demanding projects could take. But then I started noticing other things. He was on his phone constantly, texting during dinner, checking messages while we watched TV, taking calls in the other room and speaking in that low, careful voice people use when they don't want to be overheard. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd say it was work. Always work. The client, his boss, his team members. Never anyone I needed to worry about. One night I asked to see a photo of his team. We were planning a dinner party and I suggested inviting some of his coworkers. He got weird about it. Said they were all too busy, that work friendships didn't need to cross over into personal life, that I was being pushy. That's when I started paying closer attention. I noticed he'd started dressing better for work. New shirts. Better cologne. He'd always been neat, but this was different. More effort. More care. I noticed he'd stopped initiating sex. We went from 3 or 4 times a week to once if I pushed for it. He said he was exhausted. Too stressed. The project was draining him. I noticed he'd become secretive about his laptop. He'd never cared before. We'd used each other's computers interchangeably, knew each other's passwords, had that level of openness that comes from living together for years. But suddenly he was closing his laptop every time I walked into the room, taking it with him to the bathroom, sleeping with it on his nightstand instead of leaving it on the desk like he used to. 2 months into this pattern, I asked him directly, "Are you seeing someone else?" He looked horrified, genuinely shocked that I would ask. "Jesus, Stephanie. No. I'm working. I'm stressed. I'm trying to keep this project on track so I don't lose my job and we can actually afford the wedding you're planning. And instead of supporting me, you're accusing me of cheating." I felt terrible. Apologized. Told him I was just feeling insecure because we'd been disconnected lately. He softened, pulled me into a hug, promised that as soon as this project was over we'd take a long weekend away and reconnect. I went back to ignoring my instincts. Then, 3 weeks ago, I ran into an old friend at the grocery store. Jen. We'd been close in college, drifted apart after graduation when she moved to Chicago, reconnected sporadically through social media. "Stephanie. Oh my God, how are you?" We caught up in the produce section. She told me she'd moved back to Minneapolis 6 months ago, started working at a tech consulting firm, was loving it. I asked which firm. She named Marcus's company. "Wait, my fiancé works there." "Marcus Chin. Do you know him?" Her face did something strange. A flicker of recognition, then careful neutrality. "Yeah, I know Marcus. Yeah. Good project manager. He's been working crazy hours lately. Big client project." "Right. The client project." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "Nothing. Just that he's been really dedicated to it. Jen, what aren't you saying? She looked at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. I probably shouldn't tell you this. But if I were you, I'd want to know. Marcus has been working closely with someone. Really closely. Her name's Vanessa. She's new, started about 4 months ago. They're always together. Lunch, late nights, coffee breaks. Everyone at the office has noticed. My chest tightened. Who is she? I don't know much about her. Just that she transferred from our Chicago office. She's around our age, works in Marcus's department. I drove home in a daze. Pulled into the driveway and sat in the car for 20 minutes, trying to decide if I was overreacting. If working closely actually meant anything, or if I was letting paranoia turn normal workplace interaction into something sinister. Then I remembered something. Vanessa. My ex-boyfriend from college was named Vince. His sister's name was Vanessa. I'd met her once briefly at a family thing Vince had dragged me to during the year we dated. She'd been in high school then, quiet, forgettable. I hadn't thought about her in over a decade. But Marcus knew about Vince. Knew we'd dated seriously for about a year before breaking up when we went to different grad schools. Knew his name. Knew his sister's name because I'd told him the story about meeting his whole family once and how awkward it had been. It had to be a coincidence. Except I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. That night, I waited until Marcus fell asleep. Then I did something I'd never done before. I took his laptop from the nightstand, went into the bathroom, and opened it. His password was the same as it had always been. Our anniversary. He hadn't even bothered to change it. I opened his work files first. Found the folder labeled with the client name he'd been referencing for months. Clicked through the documents. They were templates. Blank presentations. Placeholder text. Nothing that looked like actual work. Nothing that would require 3 months of late nights and constant stress. I opened his email. Searched for Vanessa. Hundreds of messages. Going back 4 months, just like Jen had said. The early ones were professional. Project updates, meeting notes, the kind of correspondence you'd expect between colleagues. Then they shifted. Thanks for staying late with me again. Couldn't have finished this without you. Coffee tomorrow morning? I need your input before the meeting. You make this job bearable. And then about 6 weeks ago, the tone changed completely. I can't stop thinking about you. This is complicated, but it feels right. We need to talk about what happens next. I scrolled through months of messages. Planning secret lunches. Coordinating their schedules so they could work late together when the office was empty. Talking about me, about how Marcus felt trapped, how he'd made a commitment he wasn't sure about anymore, how meeting Vanessa had made him realize he'd settled. There were photos. Nothing explicit, but intimate. The two of them at restaurants I'd never been to. Her sitting on his desk, smiling at the camera. Him with his arm around her at what looked like a company happy hour. And then I found the message that made everything clear. I know this is weird given the history, but I don't care anymore. What you and Vince had was a lifetime ago. This is about us now. About what we want. I sat on the bathroom floor, laptop balanced on my knees, reading that message over and over. Marcus knew exactly who she was. Had known from the beginning. Had chosen to work with her, get close to her, start whatever this was with her, all while knowing she was my ex-boyfriend's sister. And he'd lied about it. 4 months. I took screenshots. Sent them to myself. Deleted the evidence that I'd sent them. Put the laptop back exactly where I'd found it. Then I went back to bed and lay there next to him, not sleeping, planning. The next morning, Marcus left for work like everything was normal. Kissed me goodbye. Said he'd probably be late again tonight. I called in sick to work. Then I called Jen. I need to know everything about Vanessa. Everything you've observed. Everything people at the office say about them. She met me for coffee an hour later and told me what I'd already confirmed. That Marcus and Vanessa were inseparable at work. That they took long lunches together. That they'd been seen leaving the office together after everyone else had gone home. That the entire department knew something was going on but nobody wanted to say anything directly because Marcus was well-liked and Vanessa was new. There's something else, Jen said carefully. Vanessa talks about you. Nothing terrible, just she knows a lot about you. Details about your relationship with Marcus. Things he must have told her. Like what? Like that you're controlling about wedding planning. That you don't let him make decisions. That you're focused on your career and don't have time for him anymore. She paused. I'm only telling you this because you deserve to know what narrative he's created. I thanked her. Went home. Spent the afternoon going through our shared finances, our lease, our wedding contracts. Taking inventory of what was mine, what was his, what was ours. When Marcus came home at 8:30, I was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine and my laptop open. Hey babe. Sorry I'm late again. The client meeting ran long. How's Vanessa? He froze in the doorway, jacket half off. What? Vanessa. Your coworker. The one you've been working late with for 3 months. How is she? How do you know about Vanessa? I ran into Jen at the grocery store. She works at your company. She mentioned you and Vanessa have been spending a lot of time together. His face went through several expressions. Surprise, then calculation, then carefully constructed confusion. Vanessa's just a colleague. We're on the same project team. The fake project? What are you talking about? I looked at your laptop last night. The client files are empty. Templates and placeholder text. There is no big project, Marcus. There's just you and Vanessa spending 3 months pretending to work late while you… What? Start an affair? Plan to leave me? Both. He set his jacket down very slowly. You went through my laptop? You've been lying to me for months. Don't make this about privacy. Okay, look. Yes, Vanessa and I have gotten close. But it's not what you think. We're friends. Just friends. The project stuff, I was working on some personal development stuff, trying to build my skills, and I didn't want to tell you because I know you'd think it was a waste of time. Show me your phone. What? Your phone. Show me your messages with Vanessa. If you're just friends, you won't mind me seeing them. That's Stephanie, this is crazy. I'm not showing you my phone just because you're feeling insecure. I can't stop thinking about you. That was in an email you sent her 6 weeks ago. Is that what friends say to each other? His face went pale. You read my emails? I read everything. The messages about how you feel trapped with me. The photos of you two at restaurants. The conversation where you acknowledged that she's Vince's sister and said you didn't care about the history. He sat down heavily on the chair across from me. Stephanie, you knew who she was. From the beginning. You knew she was my ex-boyfriend's sister and you pursued her anyway. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain to me how this is innocent. We connected. As people. The Vince thing, yes, I knew. But it didn't matter because what she and I have isn't about you or him. It's about us finding something real. You're engaged to me. I know. And I love you. But meeting Vanessa made me realize there are things missing in our relationship. Things I need that you can't give me. I took a sip of wine, keeping my voice calm. Like what? Like spontaneity. Fun. You're so focused on planning everything, controlling every detail. The wedding has become this huge production that's more about checking boxes than about us. And your career, you work all the time. When's the last time we just did something without you having it scheduled 3 weeks in advance? So you started an emotional affair with my ex's sister because I use a planner? Don't reduce this to that. This is about us growing apart. About me realizing I need something different. Then why didn't you just break up with me? Why lie for months? Why waste my time? He didn't have an answer for that. I let the silence sit between us for a long moment. Then I closed my laptop and stood up. I need you to leave. Stephanie, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can. No, we can't. Because you didn't just make a mistake. You made months of calculated decisions. Every late night was a choice. Every lie was a choice. Pursuing my ex-boyfriend's sister was a choice. You don't get to call that growing apart and expect me to fix it. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Your parents. A hotel. Vanessa's place. Just not here. This is my apartment too. Actually, it's not. The lease is in my name. You're listed as an occupant. I checked this afternoon. So you can leave voluntarily tonight, or I can start eviction proceedings tomorrow. His face hardened. You're being vindictive. No, I'm being clear. We're done. The engagement is over. You have 1 week to get your things out. What about the wedding? The deposits? I'll handle it. You just need to leave. He tried to argue, tried to negotiate, tried to tell me I was overreacting, that we could salvage this if I just calmed down and listened to him. I didn't respond. Just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. Finally, he grabbed his jacket and keys and left. I locked the door behind him and sat back down on the couch. Didn't cry. Didn't break anything. Just sat in the quiet apartment and started making a mental list of everything I needed to do. The next morning, I called the wedding venue and explained the situation. The coordinator was sympathetic but firm. I'd lose the deposits, but I could cancel without penalty beyond that. I called the caterer, the photographer, the florist. Canceled everything. Sent a group email to the guest list explaining that the wedding was off due to irreconcilable differences. Then I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I looked up Vince on social media. We hadn't spoken in over 10 years, but his profile was public. I sent him a message. Hey, I know this is random, but I need to tell you something about your sister Vanessa. Can we talk? He responded within an hour. Stephanie? Wow, blast from the past. What's going on? I called him. Explained the situation. He was silent for a long time after I finished. I didn't know she was seeing someone, he said finally. She doesn't really talk to the family about her personal life. But knowing she's involved with your fiancé, ex-fiancé, that's messed up. I thought you should know. I don't know what your relationship with her is like, but if someone in my family did this, I'd want to be aware of it. I appreciate you telling me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About Marcus. About Vanessa. About all of it. Thanks. Do you want me to talk to her? Not that it'll change anything, but no. I just wanted you to know. What you do with that information is up to you. We talked for a few more minutes. He told me about his life. Married now, 2 kids, living in Portland. I told him about my career, my life in Minneapolis. It was surreal, catching up with someone I hadn't thought about in a decade, bonded now by the strange overlap of our current situations. Before we hung up, he said, "You know, I always thought you were too good for me back in college." Sounds like Marcus thought you were too good for him, too. Some guys just can't handle being with someone who has their shit together. That stuck with me. 2 weeks later, Marcus came back with his brother to get his things. I wasn't there. I'd gone to stay with a friend for the day. Didn't want to see him. Didn't want to give him any opportunity to try to convince me to change my mind. He left his key on the kitchen counter and a note. "I'm sorry for how this ended. You deserved better. I hope someday you can forgive me." I threw the note away without responding. A month after that, Jen texted me. "Thought you should know Marcus and Vanessa broke up." Apparently, once the secrecy and thrill were gone, they realized they had nothing in common. He's been moping around the office. She requested a transfer back to Chicago. I felt nothing reading that. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just a vague sense of confirmation that I'd made the right choice. 6 months later, I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop downtown. He was with someone new, a woman I didn't recognize, young, laughing at something he was saying. He saw me. The smile dropped off his face. I nodded at him, kept walking to the counter, ordered my coffee, left without looking back. He texted me later that day. "It was good to see you. You look happy." I didn't respond. A year after the breakup, I started dating someone new. Owen, a data scientist I met through work. He was stable, honest, had a sense of humor that balanced out my tendency to overplan everything. We took things slow. No rushing into living together. No engagement after 6 months. Just steady, honest building of something real. The first time I introduced him to my friends, Jen pulled me aside. "This one's different. You can tell." "Different how?" "You're different. More relaxed. Less like you're trying to control every outcome." She was right. Owen didn't make me feel like I needed to manage his emotions or anticipate his needs or shrink parts of myself to make room for his insecurities. I could just be myself, planner and all, and he found it endearing instead of suffocating. 2 years after Marcus and I broke up, I heard through mutual friends that he'd gotten engaged again, to someone he'd been dating for 6 months. Fast, just like we'd been. I hoped she was asking the right questions, paying attention to the right signs. But it wasn't my problem anymore. 3 years after the breakup, Owen and I got married. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Simple and meaningful instead of the production I tried to plan with Marcus. My vows were about partnership, honesty, and choosing each other every day. Owen's were about respecting my strengths instead of seeing them as threats. We didn't have a honeymoon phase. We just had a relationship. Imperfect, real, built on actual communication instead of performance. And I realized something I hadn't understood when I was with Marcus. The right person doesn't need you to be less. They don't need you to shrink your ambition or dim your intensity or apologize for being organized and driven. Marcus had called me controlling because I threatened him. My success, my competence, my ability to handle my life without needing him to fix it, all of that made him feel unnecessary. So instead of rising to meet me, he'd found someone who made him feel needed in a way I never would again. Vanessa had been the symptom, not the disease. Even if I'd never found out about her, the relationship would have ended eventually. Because Marcus didn't want a partner. He wanted an audience. I think about that sometimes, about how much time I wasted trying to make someone comfortable with who I was instead of just finding someone who already was comfortable with it. The revenge wasn't in Marcus and Vanessa breaking up. That was just inevitable. Two people bonding over secrecy and rebellion were never going to last once they had to exist in the actual world together. The revenge was in me walking away before I let his insecurity reshape me, in me choosing to believe my instincts instead of his reassurances, in me building a life so full and complete that when I saw him a year later with someone new, I felt nothing but mild curiosity about whether he'd learned anything. I didn't ruin his reputation or expose him to everyone we knew. Didn't send screenshots to his family or try to turn our mutual friends against him. Just canceled the wedding, moved on with my life, and let his choices speak for themselves. And apparently, they spoke loudly enough. Jen told me later that after Vanessa left and people at his office realized what had happened, Marcus's professional reputation took a hit. Not because I said anything, but because people remembered how he'd lied, how he'd manipulated situations, how he'd been willing to deceive someone he claimed to love. He moved to a different company 6 months after the breakup. Fresh start, I assumed. Somewhere people didn't know his history. But that wasn't my concern anymore. I'd spent 5 years with someone who saw my strengths as problems to manage instead of assets to celebrate, who needed me to be less so he could feel like more, who chose deception over honesty because honesty would have required him to face his own inadequacy. Now I was with someone who chose me every day. Not because he needed me to complete him, but because he wanted to build with me. Someone who saw my calendar full of color-coded plans and smiled instead of criticized. Who understood that being organized wasn't about controlling him. It was just how I processed the world. Sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to dim your light for someone who's threatened by brightness. Marcus wanted me to believe I was too much. Too controlling. Too ambitious. Too focused on my career. Too rigid in my planning. But I wasn't too much. I was just enough for someone who wasn't him. And the moment I stopped trying to convince him otherwise, I became available for someone who already knew my worth. That's what I wish I could tell my younger self, the one who spent months second-guessing her instincts because her fiancé insisted she was paranoid. The one who apologized for asking questions. The one who almost convinced herself that sacrificing her truth was the price of keeping peace. Your instincts are data. And data doesn't lie. Marcus and Vanessa taught me that. Not through their betrayal, but through the clarity that came after. I don't hate them. Don't wish them harm. Just hope they figured out who they actually are instead of defining themselves by who they're not with. As for me, I married someone who thinks my spreadsheets are sexy, who appreciates my planning instead of resenting it, who understands that strength isn't something you apologize for, it's something you build a life around. And every time I see that color-coded calendar on our shared wall, full of plans and goals and futures we're building together, I remember, I didn't lose anything when Marcus left. I just made room for better.